Okay, so I'm trying something different this time, video-wise, because so I realised that the YouTube as a platform is kind of set up so that the aspect ratio or the orientation of the videos is landscape, and it's not particularly designed for vertical phone videos. I didn't realise this, so the fantastic thumbnails that I've been putting a bit of effort into recently in Microsoft Paint haven't been displaying on the actual feed. What has been displaying is completely random thumbnails from during the videos, and I was scrolling through them, and some of them are so funny because it's just random freeze frames from points where I'm speaking, and it's like my face is doing all sorts of weird, bizarre things. I had a good laugh at that. I wanted to talk about this time something, or talk about the conditions under which the illusion of mind-identified self tends to thrive, and that would be when it's not being paid attention to, or not in the light of clarity. It kind of hides unseen, hides and thrives under this kind of half-asleep quality, where it appears as though we're fully engaged with what's happening, but really that's not the case. And this is what's meant when you hear direct experience, and that's what's so difficult to describe about direct experience being the experience of thought versus what is suggested in the thought as an illusion, as something that's not actually real. This is also why it often requires some force, because of the habit force of this, because of this kind of half asleep momentum that accumulates, giving rise to this illusion of self made in the strange thought function. There needs to be some kind of force to break that, and to bring the attention back to direct experience. And this is often, accumulation. It could be an event, or a traumatic event, or once a kind of threshold of suffering has become high to a degree, or enough to a degree. This is what we were also talking about in the comments on the most recent video. Maybe it's the most recent video, I don't know which one I'm going to post first, but about the background awareness, or the formless awareness, or the knowingness, or the nothingness, or so on. This not perceivable in experience concept, essentially it's a concept, but it really feels like a real experience. Awareness really feels like a real thing, but awareness isn't perceivable. It becomes a subtle idea. So it's almost as though this is after awakening, after this separate entity, this separate individual, the mind-made self. When that takes a hit, when that identity is being seen through in its believability, in its realness or solidity. Self or the identity almost regresses back down to a more fundamental version, that being the infinite awareness or formless awareness, or the background, like I talked about in the last video. So it kind of drops to a position where it can hide, where it can maintain its suggestion as being something real, that real thing not being perceivable in experience, or even being the fundamental basis for perception itself. So this invisible awareness, which is never actually apparent as experience, it doesn't exist, or you could say that the nothingness, it doesn't exist. So that becomes the remnants of the self structure fall back out of sight into this infinite awareness, somehow separate from manifestation, somehow here in a way that it's not. And this would be when we investigate the senses, we investigate thoroughly the appearance and see, is there actually any awareness here separate from what's appearing, as a kind of background substratum that everything emerges from and disappears into, this nothingness that everything is born from and dies into. This nothingness, this non-existence, of course, doesn't actually exist, but it's reified as a form of identity for a while. So backtracking a bit, we can observe this, say, if you feel like you've not had an awakening yet, we can observe this in the in thought. So it seems as though that this problem of thought, this problem of identification, seems to thrive before we notice we're lost in thought. So this noticing point comes about. It comes about seemingly out of nowhere, and we realise that, I've been lost in thought. All the while we were engaged in this automatic and habitual thinking circuit. So the thought informing another thought, informing another thought, giving the illusion of the always here separate subject, engaging in that thought narrative, or living that real experience of past and future identification about something that's not actually here directly. So we notice we're lost in this thought stream, and then all of a sudden we kind of expand out of it, and there's a feeling of clarity. That feeling of clarity is the attention shifting from this kind of half asleep automatic or habitual function of mind identification to actually experiencing the experience of thought directly. It might seem like we're aware of the content of the thought, but for a split second there, we actually experience the thought directly. So, and then we might fall back into a pattern, or from there we might start to resist the thought, thinking, oh no, I shouldn't think, I should resist thought, oh, why can't I stop thinking? And then we get lost again, then we notice again, and then realise that, oh, I'm lost in thought again. And then it starts this struggling with thought. But the important part here was that recognition. And I say frequently that what happened there is the whole awakening. The going into, and it's not something that happens in time, it's not something that happens through the exertion of your will. It's something that just happens. So, and when that does happen, then we have the chance then to recognise that and then also recognize when we get lost in the thought stream. So you see how the thought stream takes over, the identification takes over, and then it identifies with that moment of noticing that we were lost in a thought stream. And then that whole, at that point, this whole hidden aspect of the self has started operating again. So if you can get an idea, I assume everyone who's watching this will know exactly what I'm talking about or have experience with what I'm talking about, regardless as to whether or not you think you've had an awakening. So that hidden function of mind identification then almost perpetuates itself by reframing that recognition into something that happened to me, as in me struggling with thought or struggling to maintain a thoughtless space, by suggesting subjectivity in time. So this is where the kind of either inquiry comes into question, because as long as we continue to assume that identity of the one struggling with thought after this point, we're going to continue struggling with thought. But if in that moment, if we take the chance whilst it's there and then direct the attention round in that moment when we have a clear direct experience of thought, and then think, what will be the next thought? And then ask, what am I that is aware of thought? And then there might be a kind of cycling of this, getting lost in thought, and remembering, and then kind of snapping out of it. But gradually that is replaced with the full attentiveness directly on the thought experience. No longer having this type of amnesia where we get lost in thought and then wake up from it. Being able to say, oh, I was lost in thought there, but there's a direct attentiveness on the thought experience more and more often, and then eventually at all times. And that creates this kind of force that's needed to break that pattern, and that generally would come about, or could come about, through inquiry. What I was describing in the last video in terms of the background is just the deeper version of the same thing. So the self structure, that suggestion of a real separate entity, when it has no longer has anywhere to hide, when we've cultivated this clarity, or at least this clarity has come about through practice or through inquiry or just spontaneously, it then kind of sinks down to a deeper level, and it suggests its own reality, or the reality is suggested as something that's not this, something that's somehow separate from the sense experience, or a background to the sense experience. And then that's when what would be useful is, as I describe it, investigating the augmentations. What is left there that makes it look like there is distance? There is a body here looking out at a separate world. There is time, so on and so on. When we deconstruct these augmentations, then the structure of self that sinks down to a deeper level no longer has anywhere to hide, or it has less and less places to hide in and continue to suggest its own reality. Anyway, that will do for now, and let me know if that's helpful, and I'll talk to you next time.